everyone, and welcome to Potato Shot Podcast right here on YouTube. I'm Brian.
And I'm Iron Dutch Murdoch.
And we just wanted to go live on YouTube just to talk about a couple little things that we saw that might be interesting in the world of MMA/boxing. Well, the first topic I want to talk about that we saw was Jake Paul has reportedly turned down the offer from Anderson Silva to have a boxing match.
That comes as no surprise. Those of you that are keeping up with it, Anderson Silva just recently beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. In a split decision victory in the world of boxing. Anderson Silva was very skilled. And the reason that he turned that fight down, in my belief, is because he realizes that Anderson Silva actually has good hands and that he would go in there and own him.
Oh, absolutely.
And Anderson Silva not only has good hands, but he has Anderson Silva's hard to put gloves on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's you've watched him throughout his MMA career and this, that, and the other. And this is not Anderson Silva's first boxing fight either. But he's very elusive. And so unlike Ben Askren, who's going to stand there flat-footed in front of him, and I would imagine Tyron Woodley's going to do most of the same. I can't see that. I mean, I think Tyron's got better hands than Ben Askren, so I do feel like Tyron Woodley's going to do better against Jake Paul. But now you're talking about somebody that actually has boxing skill,
right,
coming at him.
You know, one thing that you remember, Woodley got angry with Joe Rogan one time because he used to talk about his stamina running out. So obviously this is going to be an 8 rounds or 12 rounds, whatever it might be, boxing match. I hope he's prepping to go the distance because, you know, Woodley's big. You know, he used to have really good hands knocking people out too.
Right.
And obviously he fell on a losing streak. And, you know, hopefully this reinvigorates him a little bit. But the sad thing is you don't know which Woodley's going to show up. If the Woodley who took on, let's say, Nate Marquardt or who took on Robbie Lawler shows up,
right,
Jake Paul's going to be in for a long night.
Sure.
But with the Woodley's been showing up, who knows? And I can't remember who was talking about it, but they said that it's a possible he had looked at the way he had been fighting in the past. So they're like, all right, now Woodley's right for the picking, still a good name, just as he did with Ben Askren. Who else has he beaten? He beat Nate Robinson, the NBA star. But Ben Askren really sold me on the fight. I mean, I was actually interested just from Ben Askren, but I knew his hands were so bad. I was like, why am I going to purchase that fight, no matter how much it cost?
Yeah. You know, again, I'm not trying to downplay the Logan Paul or Jake Paul, because whether you like them or you don't like them, those guys are making big money fights. Their pay-per-views are selling, and these guys, you know, Ben Askren talked about the fact that he made a lot of money taking that fight, even though he went out there and embarrassed himself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He made a lot of money for that fight.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so you can say what you will about that, but these guys are they're putting eyes on they're putting eyes on their product. I don't want to say the boxing world, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that these fights are bringing new fans to boxing or bringing new fans to the MMA world, because they're not. This is solely growing the Paul brother
and Triller.
It's growing that brand. It's growing that, but it's working.
Right. I'm not going to take anything away from them.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you? I mean, my God, they're very successful on YouTube. They're very successful.
Sure.
And these other things, get your money now while you're young and so forth. But Jake Paul, for what it's worth, he is making he seems to be taking the sport serious. It's not like he shows up with a big belly.
No.
You know, not ready to go. Like when I watch some of them guys come in, they want to fight like tough man competitions.
Right.
he's actually fighting like a boxer. Now, here's the one thing real quick. He had said he declined, but what he suggested right here was he suggested for Anderson Silva to take on Roy Jones Jr. undercard, which honestly, that's very intriguing to me because now that was back in the day. There was talk of having a Anderson Silva Roy Jones fight back when Anderson was high.
Here's why I don't think that's a good recommendation. Anderson actually competed in a legitimate boxing fight here recently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If he fought Roy Jones Jr., even if it was an undercard fight, it would be straight exhibition. Possibly.
Right.
I also don't see Roy Jones Jr. training and coming in there because from what I saw of the Mike Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight, it was, you could tell Mike wanted to scrap and get it in. Roy Jones had no desire to get in there and go for it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And the rules were so heavily placed on him that, it was really, it truly was just an exhibition match. I would say if I don't know. If I was Anderson Silva, I would not fight Roy Jones Jr.
Right.
Because if I'm fighting people that are actually still competitive and still actively boxing, then and especially if he's looking to make a second career here. Now, granted, he's long in the tooth here as far as age is concerned.
Which one? One's 46, one's 50-some.
I'm talking about Anderson Silva.
Okay,
so if he's looking to do anything, 46. I don't know what his goal, his end game goal for boxing is. But whatever it is he's going to do, if he's going to make a run for something, he better do it now with guys that are actually competing.
Right.
Versus going out here and taking guys that have, I'm not saying Roy Jones wasn't boxing.
Right.
I just don't see where that's
unless he was making money, unless he was getting some big paydays, and that's all he was looking for.
And honestly, it could be a very very lucrative payday for him. So, competitive wise, I say no, don't take that fight. Look for if he was going to fight, take it on somebody from somebody else.
For what it's worth.
But if we're talking about the bottom line, what's the dollar figure?
Right. And for what it's worth, like I said, if you had Jake Paul taking on Woodley, undercard Anderson Silva, Roy Jones Jr., I don't know if I would buy it. Depending on the price and depending on if there's other people that are interested, it would make it more intriguing to me. Now, I'm not saying that it's a great fight for Anderson, but that's a whole nother thing.
I still would probably pass on buying that fight simply because, one, like I just said, I really have no interest in seeing Anderson Silva, Roy Jones. I feel like that'd be a snore fest.
That's almost a fight that should have happened, 10 years ago when he was. Remember, Roy Jones was showing up in the audience,
right? And
they were like, "Oh," and there was all the big rumors of them two fighting.
But I think that is. I think that's a snore fest fight, and I think that the Tyron Woodley Jake Paul fight I don't want to see that. Now, when Jake Paul finally picks somebody or finally signs on the line to fight a boxer, somebody that's got some hand skills, then we might talk about looking at buying that. Because then I want to say, I know he's fighting athletes. He's fighting
right.
He's fighting a fighter, but he's fighting an MMA fighter. And there's a difference between the training that the MMA fighter does, where they train for everything: wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, versus a boxer who is in there always working on hand speed, head movement, footwork. I mean, they just come. That's all they do.
Right.
And there's a difference between that type of fighter.
Right. All right. Well, I guess the next big news is from MMAfighting.com. And Cesar Gracie said Nick Diaz is targeting September return. Very open to taking a boxing match. So Nick Diaz, who hasn't fought since 2015 when he fought Anderson Silva, and then it was called a no contest because one popped hot for marijuana, one popped hot for steroids. So both of them, it was just listed as a no contest for both.
How about it?
And Gracie said that he sees it's possible he'll be fighting in the UFC this September.
Yep.
Let's go down.
Look, man, the UFC pay the Diaz brothers. Listen, you never have to worry about the Diaz brothers selling a fight, because if you put those two guys on the same card with the right fighters, you're going to want to buy that card. That's going to be the BMF title defense number 2 coming. You see what I'm saying? That's the kind of energy that would be on that card.
Diaz brothers are very much like Ben Askren, where they're able to, whatever they're trying to hype a fight to, they can get people interested into a fight. Like I said, Ben Askren was getting me, like I was interested just the way he was talking about Jake Paul, and the way Diaz brothers talk. I mean, if you just saw, I don't know if we'll go over to Nate Diaz, who he sent out like a tweet saying, "Oh, he's going to fight someone he's already knocked out twice." Right, talking about Colby Covington, and he was sending it to Kamaru Usman.
Well, and they've had a little back and forth there, and somebody commented that they wouldn't be surprised. I think it was another site that I followed, but they commented that they wouldn't be surprised if Nate doesn't talk his way into a fight with Usman.
Well, Usman has done an excellent job. He called out Jorge, and you could have theoretically said, no, he should not fight Masvidal,
right? Because
Masvidal hasn't fought no one else, but he fought after he beat Gilbert Burns. He called him out. Now he's calling out Colby Covington. Now, Colby does have somewhat, I mean, he's still, I think, number 1.
He might be, but but after their fight, and the trash talk continued. The thing that I loved about what Usman did, and I'm a fan of both guys, okay? Right. So, but one thing that Usman just was completely shutting Colby Covington down on is he's like, Covington, I was going to win that fight, blah, blah, blah. And Usman goes, I broke your jaw. Not only did I beat you, but I broke your jaw. Right. And it's like, that's pretty that's strong right there. But the rematch is going to be good because Colby Covington's going to come in there, man, with a fire. Like, he wants to beat Usman so bad he can taste it. He's going to put the work in.
And I don't think he's going to stand the entire time either.
Well, let's hope not.
I think he'll probably try to mix a little wrestling.
Usman's striking, and he's gotten deadly.
That's the thing someone said about Usman is he's went from usually the guys will be real deadly and then they win the belt and then they start playing it safe.
It was like
he played it safe and now he's being real deadly.
It was like old Johnny
Johnny Hendricks.
Johnny Hendricks. Man, that cat was knocking dudes out of the ring. Not literally, but you know what I'm saying. But I mean, he was sending guys skidding across the mat.
Right.
And then the minute when he got up to the dance and was fighting the top echelon fighters, it was like the dude didn't know what a knockout punch was.
True. But also, the one thing that, they'll talk about Johnny Hendricks is the alleged, maybe taking some other supplements that weren't legal. And then when USADA showed up, he shrinks up and that's true. So many. So how much was it? And, I always thought it was interesting because when Horace Gracie popped hot for steroids, some of them guys, they're steroids that are made just to make you stronger and not so much to make you get mass. So who knows if he was taking something. That's all an alleged thing, Let the other people talk about it. But there was something going on because his body changed definitely.
Well, absolutely. But being here or there, though, it would be interesting if Nate Diaz does get a title shot.
Right.
Let's be honest here. Chael Sonnen is the master of being on a losing streak and talking his way into title shots.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not pretend that Nate Diaz getting a shot at Kamaru and Usman wouldn't sell. They absolutely would sell. But here's the thing. As much as I love the Diaz brothers, he's going to have to come out there to win. And not none of this slow start. Look, I don't think for a second that he couldn't have beat – I think he could have beat Leon Edwards had he went after him. You know what I'm saying? Like, had he – but it's just like when he fought for the BMF title. About the time he started kind of turning the corner with Masvidal, that's when the fight got stopped because of the scar tissue. You know what I'm saying? But it was like he was starting to turn the corner and was kind of starting to move the fight in his favor, and it got stopped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he's going to fight Usman, he's going to have to come out there, man. He's going to have to go for it. And I think, my opinion, where Nate beats Usman is on the ground with his jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Diaz brothers, when it comes to jiu-jitsu and their ground game, man, those guys are second to none.
Yeah, they're very good. I'll be interested in seeing who Nick Diaz picks. Hopefully I really don't want to see him fight some up-and-comer. I know what UFC does, and I understand why, because they're paying these guys big bucks, and you're not going to give them a tomato can and then expect them to get $1 million. Because I know on the paper it shows $250,000. That's what, like, Nate Diaz got the last fight, I believe. Mm-hmm. But that's not also that does not include any other little benefits that's in the contract. If it's pay-per-view buys, if it's something with the merchandise,
that's kind of like the base.
Yeah, that's so everyone. So you see the 250, but let's be honest, he's probably getting a little bit more. And if you're going to pay someone big, just remember how Brock Lesnar came in, and then here's Frank Mir.
First opponent, Frank Mir.
Yeah.
Second opponent, Heath Herring.
Yeah, and then Randy Couture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he never got – but he was –
Brock Lesnar never had an easy fight.
No. And I would have loved to have seen him really – wish he wouldn't have been – but now at the same time, I wouldn't want to be punched by the guys that he was fighting either. But I wish he would have went to Boss Rutten and said – because Boss was like, hey, we could teach him. We could get him out of that being scared of being punched because he gets nervous, or it's almost like he starts flipping a little bit, getting nervous.
Yeah.
So you would have to really start train that, like, that was a training thing that he needed to be trained, was to be trained to be hit.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're right. Look, he survived Shane Carwin.
Right.
Okay. And that guy was as big as he was and hit probably like a mule. And if he survived Shane Carwin, he could have survived those other guys. The thing about it is, man, you want to fight. I tell you who had some of the best striking defense was Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
Tito always kept his chin tucked. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, when you watch his previous fights with Chuck Liddell, hell, 9 times out of 10, Tito was, I hate to say this, but it looked like Tito was quitting. It wasn't that Chuck was knocking him out. Tito was covering up and just sliding down the cage.
Right.
But Tito has very good striking defense.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So, now, since we're talking about boxing and MMA,
mm-hmm.
Oscar De La Hoya, Vitor Belfort, they're going to be boxing.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it'll be an okay match. I don't know. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya has been out for a long time.
Sure has.
So I think that's going to have a lot of ring rust on him. And Vitor hasn't fought in a while either, but he's still been closer than Oscar.
Yes.
If just because it's pure boxing, I would probably still put my money on Oscar De La Hoya.
That's who.
Just because Vitor was powerful and he would have them strong hands. But I never remember him really, his boxing being like, wow, that's outstanding. Like if you put a Diaz brother in there, that might be a different story. I might think about that one because they train boxing. I don't know how far Vitor goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously De La Hoya is seeing a lot of the former boxing greats make comebacks,
right?
Doing exhibition fights and
bringing in a lot of money.
And why not? Oscar De La Hoya was a big draw back in his day, and and I know he's stayed into the fight game as a promoter. But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing.
No.
I just question how his business sense is.
I don't know. But I mean, he's getting up there in the age, and so I mean, it was just like watching Roy Jones, and Mike Tyson looked good for his age. Physically, he was faster. He was fast, but if he got in there against someone like a Tyson Fury or a Deontay Wilder, he'll be on the canvas.
Well,
so in turn, you've got to who you're fighting, you've got to be matched properly.
Well, but it goes back to what you've always said. There should be a Masters League.
Right.
You should not expect Mike Tyson to go in there and fight guys their age.
Right.
Okay? I'm not saying that there's not guys. Look, at the end of the day, Mike Tyson come in here and boxed me right now, he'd tear me up. Even if I was trying to hit him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what age he is. But having guys within the same age demographic and stuff like that fight each other. But it also brings the question to, like with a Masters League. Let's say do the Masters League.
Yeah.
Where does that end? What's the cutoff? At what point does a man or woman age out of the fight game? In other words, where does it become a point to where you have to say, okay, you're 55 years old now, you're pushing 60, whatever.
Right.
You're done.
And you can't.
And there's nowhere that's going to give you a, you know what I'm saying? Even if you did a Masters League, the Masters League runs from 45 to 55. So you got 10-year window that you can fight in the Masters League.
And after that, you got to retire.
And then after 55, it's automatic.
Right.
You're not eligible for a license.
And
of course, obviously, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but obviously that would also, when you talk the Masters League, some other things that would look into it is obviously for their physical and getting cleared to fight, the more scrutiny would have to go onto those guys, because now you're talking about guys they're not a 22, 23-year-old guy that can recover quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. I think it'll be because the last thing you want to do is you get someone in there, let's say an Oscar De La Hoya, and he's going to get hit, guaranteed. And the last thing you want to see is his brain get rattled. And, how's his brain? Now CTE and all that stuff that they know about,
Right.
Now because back in the day when I was younger and we didn't know nothing, we were watching ECW and they were slamming aluminum chairs over each other's head or whatever. You're like, okay, who cares? Or steel chair, maybe not aluminum, but still, it's hitting that head and it's rattling that brain. And you look at so many of them guys are dead now.
Right.
And the last thing you want to see is a boxer that you really like in there rattling his brain, and now he's slurs speech and all that good stuff.
Now you take, for example, like Chael Sonnen's Submission Underground. I don't know that there is an age limit for that, because you're talking about grappling, and that's a different kind of competition. They're not striking. You see what I'm saying? And Helio Gracie, I think that was the founder there of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Right. Yeah. The old guy. Mm-hmm.
He grappled till the day he died. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he was an old man grappling. And really that becomes a matter of, obviously strength and speed and stuff like that would play into it too. But, grappling really does matter with form, technique, overall skill set, your base, all that other stuff. I mean, there's more factors and you take less, in theory, you would take less damage.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because, if a guy gets put you in a precarious situation, it's simple. If you get me locked in an armbar and I can't get out of it, I tap.
Right.
I'm out. You see what I'm saying? I'm not getting beat into the face and, driven to the mat.
Right.
So that of course, obviously is kind of a different take. When you start adding the strikes back into it, I think it would all be, but you look at Dan Henderson, Randy Couture, you got guys, fight well into their 40s.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because I don't think there's not a lot of fighters, I think, that are very successful once they start getting into that. Once you go past 40, it's kind of like, well, we'll take it fight by fight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, that's not to say that just because you hit 40, well, you're done. Now, that's not necessarily the case, but look at Donald Cerrone. How many fights he's had? And the guy's only 38, okay? But 38 in the world of MMA is getting up there.
Right.
To sit here and say, well, we'll see Donald Cerrone fighting when he's 45, I highly doubt it.
No, well, you can already see the way he's fighting now.
I don't know. Let me say this. Will we see Donald Cerrone fighting in the UFC at 45? No.
You won't see him fighting. I don't think. I mean,
He should.
His movements are. I mean, just because he's so old. I mean, and he's not even an old man.
Right.
Let's be honest.
Right. He's not an old
but
man.
just
by
because
any
you
means.
have a younger kid underneath him coming up,
right?
They're faster twitching.
He's a man that has how many hours? How many wars has he been in?
Right.
Okay. So you take all those hours of combat that he's had, couple that with he's older now, so he's got all these sport injuries. Plus, there's just certain things as you get older you slow down with, regardless of whether you're injured or not. Now, you couple all that, and now he's fighting a kid coming along that's 21, 22 years old, has not been to the top of the mountain like he has not achieved what he has, who's hungry for that stuff. Stronger, faster.
Yep.
Okay? The fights are going to get harder.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You're not going to find somebody tougher than Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone is one of the best fighters in the world to watch. Because, man, when he goes in there, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, he's going to go in there and he's going to fight. Now, it might be a quick fight. Sometimes to his favor, sometimes not to his favor. But you don't have to worry about him going in there and not fighting. But he's reaching that point where it's like, you got to ask yourself, hey, man,
right?
You know, at what point do you say enough's enough?
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, just like in the world of pro wrestling, you know, we've talked about this before too. You know, you take guys, pro wrestling is one of those things where guys who should have long been gone from the sport continue to be around. I mean, look at by the time Ric Flair actually did his farewell match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, how old was he? He was in his 50s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Easily in his 50s.
Right.
And my point being is Flair's in-ring performance there was not the same Ric Flair from 89.
No.
Okay?
Because he had Shawn Michaels lead that entire match, he said.
Correct. So, you know, the thing about it is, in Undertaker most recently, they talk about it's hard to...
Right.
When is a good time to... Or when it's hard for them guys to identify when it's time to hang it up.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, your mind still, you know, if I sit here, I feel like I think I'm 20, but I'm really 45.
Right.
You know, it's just the same way with him. Ric Flair probably thought he was back in 1989, where he was 39 years old. Because remember, it was 40 was when he left WCW, and because Jim Ross, I believe, was like, hey, we need to get a younger guy in there. And, you know, he got angry, and then other things happened with the WCW, and he went to WWF, and, you know, he was right there at like 40, 41.
Right. Well, he even talks about that. He talks about the fact that when he came to Vince McMahon for his first kind of run through the WWE there, or WWF at the time, he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
You know,
but they said that was when wrestlers used to be. 40s was when they finally got it, usually, and then they could have really good matches, and then they would roll through 50, you know, or up to 50, and then start going back into that cycle of losing or whatever.
Right. And you know, I don't know, but I guess the point I was making is I think the same can be said for MMA fighters, to include boxing.
Mm-hmm.
I think any of your combat sports, I think, like you said, in their mind, in their heart, they're still that 25-year-old guy that had the eye of the tiger. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is, Father Time has caught up with them. And
well, it's very similar. I remember watching Michelle Watterson fight. Her last fight, I can't remember her first name, but it was Rodriguez. She looked good. She was fine, but she was just like 1 or 2 seconds off from Rodriguez. Rodriguez would throw the punch. You know, you see what Watterson was getting ready to do. So,
yes, I mean, you know, it is. And quite frankly, it's just like I'm a fan of Chuck Liddell. I don't like Chuck Liddell being a highlight reel for some of these cats.
No, I don't like when someone who was a winner.
Yes.
Anderson Silva was a perfect example.
Yes.
He was probably my favorite fighter. I used to love watching him, but then he got to that point where he was just you know, he was an old. Remember, I think it was Derek Brunson who kicked him in the leg. His knee popped or something, and he went down. So it wasn't so much that he got hurt. He was just an older guy. Now he's taking older, you know, fighting a young man, taking a kick to the knee or the leg, and it pops an ACL or an MCL or whatever.
Stuff that he may have been able to walk off or absorb when he was younger. Now, So yeah, it's tough, and it does suck sometimes watching your heroes get older. You know what I'm saying? When you see that they can't necessarily make it anymore. You know what I'm saying? I mean, again, it's not saying that those guys aren't tough and that they don't bring a lot of experience and grit to the ring. But when you're actually competing on a professional scale, and especially at a level like UFC, you reach a point where it's like, you know, look, I think Matt Serra, there's nothing wrong if you're in love with the sport and there's nothing wrong with them guys transitioning and saying, you know what, I had a great career in the ring, and transition over and now share your wars, share your knowledge. Mm-hmm. Take the next generation of fighters, pass it on, and send them up to because I look at Matt Serra and his camp, man, they do great.
Yeah, Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah,
you've got Chris Weidman. I know Weidman's on his he broke his leg, but he did very well for that.
Weidman's still a very talented fighter.
Yeah, he wasn't. But once again, he's getting older.
Right.
Father Time.
Right.
Is undefeated. I don't care what anyone says.
Right. You're right.
So
you're right. You know, as much as I'd like to run it back and have Ric Flair and The Undertaker and hell, even Triple H and Stone Cold and all them guys back in the business. You just can't. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what's worse than just seeing, I think, them lose is when they come out and they don't look like they used to.
Right.
Because now Bruiser Brody once told Magnum TA, Magnum was all jacked up. He just got done with the match, and Brody said, "Kid, you look great, but remember, the first thing that goes is your body." So then you have these guys like, let's say, Sid Vicious or Lex Luger.
Well, speaking of Sid Vicious, did you see where he come out and saved the Von Erich brothers?
No, I didn't watch it. I saw there was the video for it, but I did not watch the video.
So he didn't look bad, but he came out in street clothes.
Yeah.
But you could tell just looking at his frame that his muscle definition and stuff is gone.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, I'm not knocking the guy.
No, he's old. He's an older man.
Yeah, like you said.
But look at Sting. Sting, I love Sting. He shows up on AEW, but the makeup, but he's still got that thinning hair. I'm not going to knock him because I still get excited, but I also know he's 61 years old.
Correct. And there's no other professional sport out here that he would be a combat sport that he would actively be participating in at 61 years old.
But I want to see him, but at least when he came out there, he was in good shape for a 61-year-old man. Where I've seen some guys come out there, they got the beer belly or they don't have no muscle tone or whatever.
When you talk about old men doing it, the best there ever was, as far as guys that you're sitting here going, how the fuck is a guy his age still doing this? Terry Funk.
Yes.
Terry Funk is the master.
He went from wrestler to hardcore legend.
Yes.
And that was amazing.
That was amazing.
So, all right. I guess we've hit that 30-minute mark. Well, we're past 30 minutes. We have anything else?
No, I think we're good, man.
All right. So thank you for anyone that's watched this far. And I just want to say real quick, if you're an independent artist of any type, comic book, music, whatever, give us a shout. We would love to have you on the podcast.
Love to have you on, showcase you, give you an opportunity to talk about your current art, your music, whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
I would love to meet with you.
We're looking for any independent artist that wants to just use our platform to share your stuff. So please click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell if you're watching here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. And until next time,
on Instagram.
Instagram at Potato Shop Podcast. Twitter, we're Potato Shop PC. And until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Aaron Dutch Murdoch.
We'll see you later.